was nominated by the president. In fact, it generated a lot of debate in the media. Will you say that it was an opportunity to say that the president is having an all-inclusive government in view of the fact that you are coming from the other side of the divide?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I will be surprised if the president was looking for other side of the divide sentence. You know, but even though, I mean, he knew my pedigree, right? But I think that he has made a promise. And I think he was looking for somebody from his own speech. He was looking for somebody who would be unbiased, would be fair, impartial, in dealing with the situation with regard to political correlation. I think, for me, that is the word of honor I got from him. And as a distinguished lawyer, with whom I have practiced at the bar, I take words of honor from very senior lawyers seriously. That is why I reciprocated with my word of honor. And I will be surprised if he will breach his word of honor. So I am coming to do a job which does not require politics at all. Crime is crime. I wrote it on 12th of January 2012. And that political party cards must not be an insurance against crime. And that is it, period.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I also want to ask, the nominee cannot do the job alone. He needs competent people, as he stated. The sub-institutions that are going to work under him. 19 of the Act says that we need to have the investigation division. Then the C also says that we need to look at the prosecution division. Can you share with us what you're going to do to make sure that you get the quality that you need to be able to investigate and also prosecute?
Mr. Chairman, this is a good question, but you see, I've been accused of personalizing things and acting one man. This is going to be an office, and I would rather think that we should wait for the full component of the office so that knowledge will be shared, and then we will do a collective action. But one thing I wish to assure you is that we will employ investigators who must be independent and impartial. Prosecutors must be independent and impartial. We will take them through vetting, and I'm hoping that civil society and donor community who are all interested in exercising the canker will help us to put in place the best staff and instill the best culture so that when I leave, it should be able to go on. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I want to continue from where you ended. When you leave, it should be able to go on. When the bill was passed into an act on January 3rd, there were speculations trying to think about who other can be the choice of the president until your name was mentioned. So when you leave, can you share with us people in Ghana you think are of your quality?
Disallowed.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm not done.
I have one more opportunity.
In your CV, you were handling a non-profit organization. How do you finance it? Handling it in court where you have to file with costs incurred and other stuff. How do you finance it?
Unfortunately, it was set up 17th of September 2017. It hasn't undertaken any serious activity. When I was invited and this offer made. So it hasn't acted. But before then, I was doing most of the things from the little Senate benefits I was getting, and then from the little money I had collected when I left office, even though much of it is still outstanding. You know, so that's how I went to court. I never accepted donations because I didn't want anybody to influence what I was doing. And even after I had won the cases, people wanted to give me money. I said, no, you didn't send me there to go and do it. Don't try to take part of the credit by giving me money after the fact. I don't need it.
Mr. Chairman, the honorable nominee is quoted to have said that NDC appointed Charlotte Osei to rig elections. In the article, he went on to quote him, "She was appointed by a corrupt government precisely because of her incompetence. That made her susceptible for use for an election rigging agenda." Can the nominee provide evidence for this assertion? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the problem is that there are privileges here, so we can ask questions and get away with it. I can give answers and get away with it. But I'm immune once I'm sitting here, you see. But the subject person you are talking about is cases are sub judice before an investigatory commission. And it would not be fair when there is no adversarial approach here in whatever I will say and a response from her. As a lawyer, it will be the worst thing you can do to her. I would have wished that at the time I said this, and during the time the government was in power and I was saying this, they had asked their CID to pick me up, and then I'll make a statement, and then we would have seen whether they could have won a case in court against me or not. But it is too late in the day. When they were afraid that because I'm from the same pond with them, or I was stepping on some stool, which I could throw. But I don't think it is fair for anybody, for me, when the fellow's case is sub judice before a committee, to come and be talking about it.
The matter that I raised was about the appointment of Mrs. Charlotte Osei. Not the case at the court. That NDC appointed her to rig elections. This is not in court.
Honorable Samson Yahe. Honorable members.
This is not in court.
Honorable members, the nominee's answer is that if he was to provide the information he has, it will be prejudicial to the investigations. I'm not in a position to rule on his statement because I don't know the information he has. And I think his answer is acceptable. If you proceed to ask for, he has the floor, still has the floor. So please proceed. Please, let's work in accordance with the rules we agreed. You will get your turn. If you want to do a follow-up on that, you get your turn. Please, Amzahi, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, again, the nominee is quoted to have said that former President Mahama is sabotaging corruption fights in Ghana. And to quote him, he noted that President Akufo-Addo's inability to tackle corruption, as promised, is due to the NDC moles in the ministries who are misadvising the ministers responsible for dealing with issues with corruption. Can he tell us how former President Mahama, who is out of office, is sabotaging the effort of the president to fight corruption in this country?
Yes, Honorable.
If the statement he made is true, anybody can say that it is defamatory, right? So I don't think that I want to answer that question in the face of this Parliament. I have made statements about President Mama's government. They're on my webpage. He was in government. He could have dealt with it. He didn't deal with it. And I'm not going to answer this question after he's out of office.
Chairman, I decide which one you answer or not. Sorry, Honorable Nominee.
Very
but
well.
kindly listen to me. Were you stating a fact or writing an opinion? If it is a fact, then you're liable to substantiate it. If it's an opinion...
I was stating a perception.
Yes, Honorable, proceed.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, in the critiques of the honorable nominee, he indicated that the establishment of the Office of Special Prosecutor, Special Prosecutor Office as a body corporate, only serves to add another bureaucratic layer to the prosecutorial authority of the AG. He went on to say that the AG office is seriously understaffed and underfunded, and that the budget will be burdened further with the creation of the office in issue. Are those views still relevant, especially when the clause 1 of the bill you critiqued was maintained in the Act as Section 1?
Mr. Chairman, as you call it, it's a critique, and it was intended to persuade Parliament to act otherwise. But when you want to attribute a statement to somebody, don't read it out of context. In the very paper he's referring to, I stated that the president has given, is under moral compass and integrity of president. It's on page 6 to 7. I stated that what the president wanted to do was doable, and every patriot must help him to achieve it. As an objective critic, I give the pros and cons. I am not some pseudo lawyer who gives one side of the case. Even in court, I state the case against me, and I state why my case is superior. And that's what I did. I said that this could have been done, and I would have thought the Attorney General and the DPP should have done it. But the president has given an electoral promise to the people of Ghana, upon which he won the elections massively. He is duty and morally bound to comply with his promise, and that it can be done within the confines of the Constitution. If you read the two together within context, what he's attributing to me is a half-truth.
Yes, Honorable Obiama.
I want us to look at Act 959. I don't know whether you have your copy here.
My papers are many, but go ahead.
Yes. I want us to start with Section 71 on plea bargaining. There are various provisions on plea bargaining under Section 71 of the Act, Act 959. If I may be permitted to read just some aspects of it. 71.1 says, a person under investigation or charged with corruption or a corruption-related offense may voluntarily A, admit the offense and make an offer of restitution, or B, admit the offense and offer to provide information that will aid in the arrest and prosecution of other persons whom that person knows have committed or about to commit corruption or a corruption-related offense. Now, the special prosecutor is giving more or less a blank check as to whether to accept the offer of restitution or consider if the offer is acceptable to the prosecution, even though eventually the court may come in. If you look at 71.4, in considering whether the offer is acceptable, you're required to look at the history, level of cooperation, willingness, likelihood of obtaining a conviction, etc. One, what's your general opinion about this provision? And two, how do we prevent abuse under this provision?
Mr. Chairman, we should go back and look at the offenses the special prosecutor can prosecute. Out of the 10 offenses listed with the general provision that other offenses, 6 of them are misdemeanors, 2 are felonies, 2 are unclassified. So for me, the issue is not necessarily wanting to fill in Sawam with people. One of the issues of prison administration is to reduce the number there so that we don't spend money feeding people whom we shouldn't feed. So I see this plea bargaining thing as a good incentive for those who want to make reparation for the consideration of the court and go and sin no more. The office will have to take into consideration all the grounds upon which reparation must be accepted. And the reparation must be reasonable, because the reparation eventually will come to the knowledge of the people of this country. Even though we can't ask all of them questions, in doing that, our minds will be tuned to what is reasonable. And when we get something which is reasonable, the court will endorse it. And we are hoping that if we can get monies back, what's the use imprisoning him when you can't get the money back? If he agrees to get the money back only for a conviction and probation, I think that is better for the nation than imprison him 10 years, feed him 10 years, give him prison clothing, and then he may have, if he is grown, he will have chronic conditions, and you'll be sending him to hospital up and down, and the president may be compelled to give him an early pardon. So if he will bring part of the money or all of it back, and is reasonable, that is the thing I love about this section. So that those who think that the office is just going to be there locking people left, right, and center, will realize that the office will act reasonably. And it's only cases which is in the national interest after investigation to prosecute, that will be prosecuted. But when people realize they are false and say, me a culpa, through my fault, through my most grievous fault, please, I will pay reparation. Why not? I mean, even God forgives, let alone we. Thank you very much.
With your experience as Attorney General, for a long-standing experience, Deputy Attorney General, I'm sure you are aware that this section is to look at how persons in public office may want to send their assets abroad, including funds. With your experience, how do you think we can benefit from this?
We can benefit enormously from this. There is an international something on politically exposed persons. And if you even open an account in certain countries like the UK and America, they ask you to fill a declaration of consent that if questions are asked about you, the bank is at liberty to provide them. Right? So mutual legal assistance gives us the opportunity for those who think they are smart enough to put their monies and go through the Kotoka International Airport because they are exempted from very critical screening and deposit them abroad. We will trace them, right? And then they will have to decide whether they will come and pay reparation or bring the money back, or we deal with it. I don't want to talk. I was Minister of Interior, so I know the security and intelligence methods of doing it. We will use these methods. So those who think that they've hidden something abroad, maybe they don't need to approve me. Because if they do, I will find it. I have the capability. I've done it before. And under my if you approve me, it will be done.
back to the Act. I notice under Section 80, consequential amendments, that indeed Section 54 of the Criminal and Other Offences Procedure Act has been amended. And in amending, it says where the special prosecutor enters a nolle prosequi under subsection 1, the special prosecutor shall state reasons for doing so. What would you say about this? What's your observation here?
Well, this is what Parliament has said. Normally, when you enter nolle prosequi, you do. When the Attorney General enters nolle prosequi, it doesn't state reasons. But this Honourable Parliament decided that maybe the special prosecutor must be able to explain why he's entering it. He might have taken some cut and wants to withdraw it. So pin him to give a reason so that if it's not reasonable, the public will know. The mistake is that it hasn't stated that the special prosecutor cannot withdraw a case he's prosecuting. You know, you can withdraw the charge, which is almost the same as a nolle prosequi. But you see, the Act goes for nolle prosequi and left the other hand. You know, so there's that lacuna, which maybe in due time we will have to consider what we really want.
Right. I was going to ask you, do you think that we should add even withdrawal of a charge to?
I think it is cumbersome, you know, because if you bring a charge and then you realize that there's no evidence to convict, why will you? Look, in the first place, to charge a person is to put the fellow under stress, his family under stress, right? He has to go to expense to hire a lawyer to defend himself. The state has to spend money on the trial. A judge will have to sit. Prosecutors will have to be assigned, right? So if you start prosecuting, and then it shows that some of the witnesses perjured themselves, right, or their evidence is not maintainable, why do you waste state funds to continue? You should be able to withdraw. If your hands are tied and you want to continue, you will continue, you'll be convicted, and the state loses more. So I think that it is good for every prosecutor to have the ability to withdraw, because you see, that discretion has principles that govern it. You don't look for victims. You look for people who have committed offenses contrary to the national interest. So I don't think we should put it in law. Even for me, this whole thing about giving reasons for nolle prosequi, well, it's there, so we will follow it. Otherwise, I would have thought that the original position should have stood. But once it's in the law, it must be obeyed.
In the year 2000, you were vice presidential candidate. I'd like to know whether you are still a member of NDC. And if you are, what are your views about the appointment of a special prosecutor whose political coloration is well known? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. If you read Section 3 of the Criminal Offences Act, the definition of a public officer includes a potential public officer. So when the president nominated me and announced it to the whole world, I became a potential public officer, recognized under the criminal code as a public officer. So as far as I'm concerned, since that day, I'm neutral. That's why you've not heard my voice over the air saying anything, because I'm coming to an office which has to be neutral and impartial. Yes, I have been a leading member of the NDC. I will never regret it. That was my contribution towards national development. But I have been nominated. That I'm a potential public officer. From that day, I have to maintain neutrality. That is what I'm maintaining. If you approve me and I'm sworn in, then I'll even be more bound. There have been many things that has gone on, I would have replied. But because of my neutrality, I've been gagged. The president gagged me since 11th of January, you know. And when I became special prosecutor, If there's anything I dislike, I can write about it. That's the cost.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really from NDC, or he's still a member.
Mr. Chairman, one doesn't need to resign. The Supreme Court has held that while you are a public officer, you cannot take part in party politics. I think it involved Dr. Ajay and Co. I did that case in the Supreme Court. So I don't need to. No, even when you are a potential public officer, you are supposed to exhibit neutrality. So I don't need to make a formal resignation of anything. It's by operation of law.
Yes, I know that the nominee has written many articles, and I hope that you remember this particular one. The title of the article is Amidu vowed to Mills to ensure that the government complied with the 1992 Constitution, dated 14 August 2017. He was purported to have said that, and I quote, "It is against my northern custom for anybody to invite a senior brother's wife and wants the junior brother to implicate her in her presence." The quotation goes on, and he says, "Call me ethnocentric, but I was born in the northern region, in the Northern Territory, sorry." These are very profound statements and suggestive to me and to many people that there could be possible bias if your appointment is approved, possible bias on your part in dealing with issues that concern family, tribe, ethnic groups, and so on. So can you just explain to us what the situation is?
Mr. Chairman, I was reacting to a situation where young people who didn't know historical facts were making accusations. So, and I didn't want to state all the facts. So I gave an inkling into what took place. To say that I am from the Northern Territories and somebody's wife, my brother's wife, these are matters of fact. And nobody can take away from me the fact that I was born in the Northern Territories of the British Protectorate. Nobody can take away the fact that this country became Ghana when after the plebiscite. They are facts, but we are Ghanaians, and we are learning to build a nation. We don't throw away custom. It is custom that makes our identity. And I'm saying that you can never get me to tell you about my brother's wife in her presence when I have written to you officially and mentioned her name. That's all it's about. That doesn't depict bias. I had written a whole letter. Mama Ayarga, the Honorable Mama Ayarga, when he was on about it, I gave the letter and he was invited to a friend's house to read it. Right? He knows I mentioned all the names. So when he called me and wanted me to say it, I didn't think it was prudent. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't make me biased when I've named the name in a letter. And then you call me before the fellow. Is this the fellow you mean? I mean, what is that? It doesn't make me biased. If it were making me biased, I wouldn't have written officially in my capacity as Attorney General, naming names. So I can't be biased. I am fair. Even if you are my brother, I will deal with you if you breach the law, even if I have to hire a lawyer for you.
We thank the nominee for that assurance. We shall be looking up, watching critically to ensure that there is nothing to show ethnicity, because we are all against that kind of
Honorable
behavior.
that's your last opportunity.
Oh, I have one more. It's follow-up.
Please, this is the fifth question you're asking. So 2 are follow-ups, but please, this is your last question.
Yeah,
Please
the last
proceed.
one. The last one is about, it's taken from his critique of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Bill. And in it, he said that I am fortified in the belief that the attempt to pull a fast one on Ghanaians by the insertion of Clause 3(4) of the bill to negate the fight against corruption is the work of a strong and powerful cabal within the government. I hope he remembers that. We want to know, maybe you might not mention this, but who are these powerful cabals? And how do you intend to counteract the activities of this powerful cabal within the government? Because if these people are so strong to even influence the bill to their advantage, you are going to a position where these people still may have a leeway. How are you going to deal with this cabal? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was writing upon credible intelligence. You know, intelligence is not necessarily evidence. And I'm happy that because of the manner in which I wrote it, civil society were able to convince Parliament to remove the fact that we are only to prosecute, or the special prosecutors prosecute only corruption of a certain magnitude. So that when somebody steals plantain, he can go for 5 years. And yet when somebody takes 200,000 for a bribe, he can walk away. I think I achieved that objective. If anybody, I've said it time without number, commits a corruption offense, he will not be, I will not see him as a member of a political party. I will see him as a suspected criminal. It's pure and simple. And that's how I will deal with the fellow. Crime is crime, and the president repeated it. Crime is crime without political correlation. And that is how the office will be dealt with, will be supervised if I am approved. Indeed, as I've said, the fact that you know me, if you come to talk to me about it, I may order your arrest, because under Section 239, trying to directly or indirectly influence the special prosecutor as a public officer is corruption. Many Ghanaians don't know that. So we'll try to be as impartial as possible, as humanly as possible. We are going to try to be the moral compass, and will be the gatekeepers, so that nobody will say the ask is casting one way.
Mr. Chairman, like I said, the Gadis have and Frafras have this doc thing they always fight about, and Concombes and the Mobes, the B-Mobes, that's British Mobile, have this issue of cowtail, this man. You know, Gonjes and Frafras. I always thought that it's like that, but I'll leave it at that. And maybe one day we'll talk about it over a pot of pito. But, Mr. Chairman, let me read a quotation from one of his papers. I want to know whether it is attributable to him before I ask a question. It is a quote. The Constitution has clearly delineated the type of public officers who shall be appointed by the President with the approval of Parliament. Public officers in the category of special prosecutor do not fall under that category. It is unconstitutional for Parliament to partake in the approval, and it is the exclusive appointment powers of the President. Is it really something that you wrote, and do you stand by it now, that you think that Parliament should not vet you and that only the President should do that?
I wrote it in the 25-page critique. It is there, and if you remember, at the beginning, I answered the question myself by saying that I raised it with the President because Parliament was now requiring that the fellow should be of the same conditions as a Court of Appeal judge and be subjected to Parliament, approval by Parliament. And then the issue was, should we throw away the dirty water with the baby? And I said, it is, for me, with the President's own commitment, it was more important to fight the canker than to worry about principles of constitutionality, particularly when the President had called my attention to the fact that once Parliament had passed it, which I knew myself, until the Supreme Court declares it unconstitutional. That is the law. I agreed with him entirely. And I have said to this House that I didn't want anybody to think that it was because I may be afraid of vetting. That was why I wrote it. That's why I'm subjecting myself to your vetting. It wasn't, I was writing this as a matter of constitutional law, which I thought. But Parliament thought otherwise. The President is not the Supreme Court. I am not the Supreme Court. As I indicated, President Trump minuted that a law he was signing was unconstitutional, yet he signed it.
Thank you very much. That was your view. Maybe that's not your view today. So let's move on. Parliament has thought otherwise, so you are complying with it. The other issue, Mr. Chairman, that I wanted the nominee to look at is the current practice that we have in Ghana of newspaper trials. When somebody is accused of any crime, whether it's corruption, it's particularly corruption, the investigative bodies leak, let me use that word, leak the information to the press for the person to first be tried in the newspapers. By the time the person goes to court and have his say, he's totally destroyed. His credibility is gone. In fact, some people have collapsed. Some may have even died, and some have never recovered from the fact that they are prosecuted in the newspapers, they are maligned and insulted. At the end, they are free. But they have no name any longer. They have no credibility any longer. I want to ask you, if this House recommends you and you are approved by the main House, if this committee and you are approved by the main House and ultimately sworn in by the President, what sort of internal rules will you set in to ensure that this prosecutor's office, special prosecutor's office, that has received broad support from every Ghanaian, does not suffer the fate that we're currently suffering? Just last week, one happened. A similar thing happened. I'll come to that question of the Auditor General's report, because it's a different question. So how are you going to ensure that your office does not follow that same principle of getting information out that we are investigating this person, this is what the person has done, is prosecuted, he's maligned, he's insulted, he may be free, but then he's totally finished. If he has business partners, he has no more credibility any longer. How will you be able to convince us that that's what you will do, will be able to at least do your work and allow the person to have his say in court?
Mr. Chairman, all I can say is that I don't subscribe to people being tried by the press, because every Ghanaian is entitled to presumption of innocence. And it is the responsibility of the prosecution to prove his guilt beyond every reasonable doubt. He has no obligation to prove his innocence. So, if you watch, when I was Deputy Attorney General, Minister of Interior, I scarcely gave press interviews about people's cases, because it's not only unethical, it's unfair. And a reputation one destroyed is difficult to retrieve even when you are acquitted. I think that the question you have asked me, I hope the Ghana Journalists Association is taking note. They are a credible professional organization. I'm a lawyer. I'm telling you what we lawyers think about it. I cannot decide for the Association of Journalists. I think that that matter will have to be taken with them, because the integrity of everybody is important. My office, I can assure you, will try to protect the people we are investigating until we decide we are going to make a charge and charge the fellow. But you see, we are dealing with Law 959, and if you look at it, Parliament decided that the reports should be submitted periodically. When I read it, what is the nature of the report? And when you submit a public report, what happens to the people being investigated? Will it be my office which will be leaking it? Or by complying with law, people who are being investigated are leaked? These are some of the issues we have to think about and see how best we can handle it. But I can assure you that I disagree with people being investigated before they are put to trial, being tried in the press. It is, I believe, unconstitutional.
We have the Auditor General and Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. We have the AG itself, the Attorney General, and we have several other laws that seek to fight corruption. In spite of all this, the perception about the average Ghanaian is that we have not succeeded in our fight against corruption. In fact, if there's anything, the view is that corruption is going higher and higher. That's why the president's call to set up a special prosecutor was widely hailed.
It's well known that I'm not the one who chooses victims. Anybody who is caught in the net is dealt with. That itself, if I'm approved, serves as a warning to perpetrators of the offense or people who want to perpetrate it, that you better be careful, otherwise you'll be hauled. I have expressed my own doubts whether we will succeed. But I think that if you establish a credible institution with a credible culture, you can reduce corruption significantly. If you establish a credible institution that does not take political instructions in cases, but acts in accordance with the true spirit of the law, the true prosecutorial spirit of dealing with citizens as citizens, and only prosecuting them when they have breached the law and it's in the national interest to do so, then many people will stop or reduce their ability to be corrupt. In fact, I had said that I had quoted Linda Ofodikwafu, who even said that if the president failed in dealing away with corruption, Ghana will die. And I said that I don't think Ghana will die as such, but that the revolution of the fight against corruption may have to await another revolution. Because if we don't stop this canker and we think we can go away with it, people have used it as a ground to destabilize this country in the past. I'm saying that let's stop it before any opportunist will use it.
I think Honorable Hello has asked this question. But for record's sake, I will ask you a similar one. Before your name was brought to the people of Ghana and made public, there were those who had every belief that the president was going to nominate a party loyalist to occupy the position you are occupying now. And in fact, as far as they were concerned, that person was never going to be able to perform effectively and efficiently. Of course, you were a party person, and not just a party person, you were once a vice presidential candidate for a political party. There are people both in the NDC and the NPP who believe that they are not comfortable with you. I want you to look in their face and assure such people that you will do your work with a fear or favor,
Malice or ill will.
with a malice or ill will, with a party consideration, and that the trust that the president and the people of Ghana have in you, when you finish your work, we will all be proud of what you have done.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me make this prologue. I was invited to meet the president. I did not know what we were going to discuss. And if anybody had told me that I was going to a meeting in which I would end up accepting to be a special prosecutor, I would have sworn that it's not possible. And when I was writing all these things, I did not consider myself as doing it. And as I said, in 1999, I was nominated to the Supreme Court. I declined it. But you see, when we spoke as honorable men, realizing his commitment, I thought that if we fought corruption all this time, to refuse it, if Ghanaians heard it, will think that then why have you been doing all these things all these years? Right. And I'm saying that any prosecutor who chooses victims because he doesn't like them is not a prosecutor. A prosecutor who lives by the taught tradition of the law will prosecute only serious criminals. And he will do so without reference to political correlation. And indeed, a prosecutor is not allowed to allow himself to be played politics with. Indeed, read Jackson, Robert Jackson, former Attorney General of the United States and later on Supreme Court Justice. He was one of the prosecutors at the Nuremberg Tribunal. He's written fantastically about prosecutors. The duty of the prosecutors is to do service to the community by making sure crime is reduced. And what I am going to do is to make sure that if the docket, and I'm not going to even do the investigation, I may not even do the prosecution, independent people qualified will bring the docket, or they may not even bring it to me if I've delegated the function. But if the docket comes and is waiting for prosecution, it doesn't matter where you come from, you'll be prosecuted. And I'm saying that politics will not come into it. That I can assure anybody. But you see, what I would advise is that the radio, the internet, many people make confessions on them without knowing. They think they're exercising freedom of speech. But you see, you confess, and then you get into the Inyaba situation. And when you do that, you don't blame the public prosecutor. Inyaba was a boy who went to Accra Academy. His father kept money under his bed because he couldn't send it to a bank. The boy had his birthday. He went and picked one envelope and sent his friends to a restaurant, and they ate. When the father came, money was missing. Instead of him to keep quiet, he went to the police station and reported the boy. Right? Then the boy wrote, yes, my father had a slash of money under his bed. I saw it and took it. That is the Inyaba situation. You know? So if you don't go to the police won't pursue you. If you don't talk on the air and said, I did this and this man is not rewarding me even though I funded him, under section 129, to fund the potential presidential candidate in anticipation that he will give you a job, is corruption. Read the law. But see, you say it on radio, confess your sins. And then when the special prosecutor says, come in, yes. So I'm saying that let's be careful what we say in radio. You see? Let's be careful.
Now, Mr. Chairman, because of the restrictions we have to work under, I have a number of questions. But before I ask the question, I wish to present to the nominee some few documents, and then I'll ask a question of him to speak to those documents. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll want to give you copies of the documents.
What is it?
Yes, the first
if you're
one,
going to quote from it, unless it is challenged, you can quote from it.
No, I just want him to have it, you know, so that...
I have to see it,
okay.
and then you can go straight and ask the questions. Then.
So the first one is a letter dated 18th January 2012 and signed Martin A.B.K. Amidu, entitled Letter of Apology. And this was to His Excellency Professor Evans Atta Mills, President of the Republic of Ghana, Office of the President.
I want the nominee to confirm, to look at it, and I'll ask the questions later so that he can speak to these documents. The second one is entitled Government Covert Agent. Anas lies gargantuanly to the whole world again, by Martin A.B.K. Amidu. And it's another document I will want him to speak to when I ask my question. And then the other one is Okujetwa Ablakwa is uncouth and uncultured in insulting elders by Martin A.B.K. Amidu. Now it's important, before the question, Mr. Chairman.
Member, proceed. Your question has been asked from these documents already, so they are not new. So please proceed with your question. The commentary before, cut them and go straight to whichever question you want to ask from the documents, please.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, the directive principles of state policy under Article 41 of the Constitution says that the exercise and enjoyment of rights and freedoms is inseparable from the performance of duties and obligations, and accordingly, it shall be the duty of every citizen. And my emphasis is on C, so I'll quote C, 41C, to foster national unity and live in harmony with others. Mr. Chairman, also, if you look at Section 13(1)(b) of the Office of Special Prosecutor, it talks about similar expectations of the person, to occupy this office. Now, in view of the requirements of the Constitution contained in Article 41C, I wish the nominee to examine the documents that I have referred to and comment honestly on the circumstances in a way to demonstrate that he has a capacity to meet this requirement of living in harmony with others.
Mr. Chairman, I will talk about this letter of apology. This letter of apology, if we had time, I would have produced documents to show how it was procured. This letter of apology was procured from me by the late Kofi Awono, an elder, a former chairman of Council of State. So you will see that at the end of it, I state, and I did that carefully, as it is customary, I have solicited the chairman of the Council of State and Captain Kojo Chikata, retired, as elders, to be kind enough to reiterate my apology to you on my behalf. They asked me to write this letter, and I have said it. Captain Chikata is alive, right? And when Alhaji Mama Idrisu called me and said they wanted this letter, I told him they could sack me. But when the two of them asked me to write this letter, the first letter didn't have Captain Chikata's name. My secretary, Perpetual Achana, who is still working, sent it to Kofi Awono's office. Then he added the Chikata, and when he brought it, the girl typed it and added it there. It was procured by the chairman of the Council of State, who said he was meeting the president that day, and that he and Captain were going to present it to him, and that they had had certain discussions. At the back of my mind, I knew that they were just looking for evidence of an apology and then to do what they wanted to. But my custom respects age. I've worked with these people since 1982, right? So I gave them the letter. How come that a confidential letter delivered by the chairman of the Council of State to the president is now making the rounds? But I have already replied to this letter and stated what I'm telling you here today, that it was procured by me by two elders who convinced me that this was not a matter. Just give us the letter and we'll send it. So I wrote it. In any case, for me, I don't see anything wrong when a young person has had a misunderstanding with an elder, somebody who has been his friend for over 35 years, right? and who invites him, come and help me, and there's a breakdown of trust. Just one day, 13th, Mr. Bibaku Mensah said Bibaku Mensah is excellent, he's alive. Until the 13th, the president and myself had never had a problem. So if we had a problem, he's older than me. In Northern Custom, no young man is right. If I'm telling lies, tell me. Even when you are right, you meet elders, you apologize. When you go out, then they tell them you were wrong. We just had to let him apologize. That is what this letter means. You are not now, you know that.
So, Chairman, does he accept responsibility for the letter and apology to which his signature is appended?
I am saying that I wrote it on, I accept it under the conditions I wrote it, and Captain Chikata is alive. If I'm lying,
yeah.
So the Captain Chikata is alive. He wouldn't deny it. As for the other articles I had written,
Honorable, the main question he asked you was, looking at Article 41 and the requirements, it says that, are you able to say categorically that you can live with other people in harmony?
That I have lived with decent people in harmony for 66 years. I cannot live in harmony with criminals. That I won't lie. I won't lie. But decent, respectable people who will not ask you to do this and then stab you in the back. Those are traitors. I can't live with them. But decent people, I will live with them. Criminals, I can't.
The Speaker, you know, they were, sorry.
Chairman, no, just before he finishes, the Honorable Martin Amidu have held high office in Ghana of Attorney General. There is a letter of apology to which we have his signature as the responsible person. Now, reference to Captain Chikata, he's not before this committee. Reference to Honorable Kofi Awuno of blessed memory is not a reference we can go to. Is he responsible to this letter and its content?
I am saying, Mr. Chairman, that I wrote it under their persuasion. It's my signature. It's there. It's mine. But the circumstances under which they procured it is reprehensible.
Chairman, I'm raising this because as special prosecutor, we don't want to hear tomorrow that a certain letter signed by him as special prosecutor is procured somewhere. That's the reason. So I want to establish it. So please.
Mr. Chairman, I've said that this is my signature. And I've explained that nothing in this world can be taken out of context. And I've said that this is my signature. And I'm saying that the circumstances under which it was procured, it's not a circumstance in which I would ordinarily have written it. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm allowed a follow-up because of just a quick one.
Please go on with your questions.
All right. Just, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I presented 3 documents, and because he said also in answer that he cannot live in harmony with
Honorable
people.
Member, you have asked one question, which he has answered. He's not done on
3 documents to speak to the 3.
Please.
Thank you.
He doesn't have to speak to documents. You may quote from them. You may ask questions relating to them. He chose to refer apology. Then your first question was whether he can live in harmony, reference the Constitution. Proceed with other questions. If you want to speak to any document, please do.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I thank you and I take your guidance. Thank you very much. I will proceed, but if you would permit me to just make an observation, then I'll proceed with the next question. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, please.
Please, observations are not permissible.
Okay.
Please ask the question.
So, are you, honorable nominee, suggesting to this committee then that the late Professor Mills, Anas Amirial Anas, and Honorable Samuel Kujeto Ablakwa, per the articles I have shown you, were criminals, and that is why you haven't, or you were not in harmony with them, as evidence in these documents. Thank you.
I have never made any such suggestion. No way.
All right, I will move on to Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. Chapter 24 of the 1992 Constitution still deals with Code of Conduct for Public Officers. Now, Mr. Speaker, I refer precisely to Article 284, which reads, "A public officer shall not put himself in a position where his personal interest conflicts or is likely to conflict with the performance of the functions of his office." Unquote. Quote and unquote. Also, Mr. Chairman, the independence and impartiality of the office the nominee seeks for approval for is implicit in Clause 72A of the OSP Act 959, when in part it states that a member of the board shall not engage in conduct or an activity that may undermine the integrity, independence, and impartiality of the office. Mr. Chairman, answering questions here, the nominee has also talked about how he is expected to be impartial. Now, I make reference to an article the nominee wrote recently. It is entitled President John Mahama's Last Midnight Appointments, Contracts and Recruitments, and dated 21st December 2016. Now, I'll just quote portions and put my question. The Luther John Mahama government promised a smooth transition as though he had an option in the matter. The spin is in the blood of the Luther government, which loots and spins the plundering of the public purse for likes of Wyoming, Waterville, and others, and inflates contract prices to the detriment of the public purse. One would have thought that the massive defeat of the Luther government, never witnessed in the annals of Ghanaian history, will make it circumspect. And the last quotation, and in fact, if you read through this article, every reference to the NDC government at the time is qualified with Luther government. Ghana is worth dying for, and so fellow citizens, speak up and defend your 7th December votes by not allowing this Luther government to deliberately make it impossible. Mr. Chairman, the question is, by this posture, that is demonstrable partiality, will the nominee consider himself an impartial candidate for this office, and will you not be compromising the independence and impartiality required of the holder of this office?
Chairman, at the time the nominee wrote that article, the nominee was a constitutional defense activist. And he wrote that article pursuant to Article 3, which even enjoins that if any action or activity may even lead to the abrogation or suspension of the Constitution, you are at liberty to even use arms and force to stop it, right? So that's the context in which that letter must be looked at. And nobody can be accused when he is exercising his right as a citizen to defend the Constitution of partiality. I was defending the Constitution. I had to do it as robustly as I could. As special prosecutor, I have to exercise neutrality, and that's what I'm going to do. You know, we have politicians who have gone to the highest bench. They haven't exhibited politics in that bench. General secretaries of parties are now sitting there. They haven't exhibited any partiality. So why will I, a constitutional activist, defending the Constitution pursuant to Article 3, go and be biased when there's no crime. I mean, the whole world will see, lawyers will see that I am being biased. The law is not something you can take for a ride. It's a community where defense counsel, other lawyers reading it, will know that you are not acting well. And that is why even at the last bar conference, the Bar Association offered me the chance to be a guest speaker. Unfortunately, I was going to London. The community of Bar Association will never invite you as a guest speaker if you are a person who wantonly shows partiality as a lawyer. But as a constitutional defense advocate, I will have to be partial because I have to stop what I think is against the Constitution. And those are why the words are very strong. You see, and that's why I said Ghanaians should defend, because the Constitution says as citizens we should defend. So I was asking Ghanaians to exercise a constitutional right. You can't accuse me for undertaking my rights under the Constitution unless you want to suppress my own political activity as prohibited by Article 3(2).
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well taken. Now let's look at some legal rulings from this from our courts. And because you have been an active player in that field, I will seek your intelligent assessment of two situations. You challenged the decision of the state to pay judgment debt to Mr. Alfred Agbesiwoyomi because, in your view, the agreements under which the judgment debts were paid were unconstitutional for lack of ratification or approval by Parliament, therefore unenforceable. Now, why do you think in a similar case involving the Gitmo 2, the court directed the government to either return the two suspects or take the agreement to Parliament for ratification when the latter was not an option in the Woyomi case you took to court?
Let me be honest with you. The Woyomi case, I did the case and saw how the order of the court for refund was being hedged around all the time. So I can speak about that. This Getimo 2, I've not even seen the judgment. Is it reported? Is it reported? I don't know. But I haven't seen it. And I will not comment on something I have not seen. You know.
Honorable Barbara, I see.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, Mr. Martin Amidu. I am impressed looking at your background, from a very humble background. Irrespective of your background, the school that you attend, you can make it in life. So congratulations. Mr. Amidu, Mr. Chairman, can you share in all honesty the circumstances of you being asked to step aside as Attorney General by the then President, Professor John Evans Atta Mills, as some quarters are asserting that the ground for your dismissal is insubordination? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can assure you that I was not dismissed for insubordination. Indeed, there is a consent judgment filed in the High Court which shows that the termination of my appointment was wrongful, and the government was ordered to pay me 1 month's. I agreed to it. I didn't want to pull this thing. So when they suggested 1 year's salary, I said, okay, it's all right. It's not the money I'm needing, it's the principle. So the whole idea about me being sacked and all that, there is a court judgment. And indeed, the government before it's left was pulling its legs from paying my benefits. And the present government, if they paid at the last end, before they even paid some of it, my interests are still piling. My official card since 2012, the court ordered it. It's still hanging there. But I'm following it. So anybody who gives the impression that I was dismissed for insubordination should go to the court and read the judgment and the terms of settlement. and there's a new Attorney General who should be able to make that available. So don't let us. And you see, let me say one thing. Professor Mills was a very close friend, and I was a very close confidant and advisor. And I'm saying that His Excellency Sir Biba Kumensa, his secretary, and Colonel Lawson will tell you that there is no week he doesn't send for me specifically until the 13th, whom I don't know who asked him to call me and my brother's wife and put those questions to me. That's when I thought there was breach of trust. So I told him, I won't serve you again. I said it, that there's a breach of trust. You asked me to come as a friend. If you don't trust me again, I won't serve you again. And then the issue went on. Go and come at 3 o'clock. I said, I will send my resignation letter the moment I get to my office. His Excellency said, Mensa speaks in Hausa. I'm your senior brother. Come back. So I come back. Captain Chikata comes, takes me into a room. How can we seniors be here? And you are leaving us and going. Go and collect the money. So I go to court on the 16th. That's how come this letter eventually came. And then on the 19th, they announced that they had terminated my appointment. Then somebody goes to say I was terminated for misconduct. So I went to court. That's the situation. Bibakun is alive. He was ambassador to the Vatican, right? He was there. Martin Mills was there. Betty Mold Drusu was there. I was there. And Betty Mold's husband and myself continue talking. I have the emails here. Don't let us go there.
Thank you.
And
Don't go there again.
that is why I wrote a tribute when Prof died. It pained me he died. And now Adu will tell those of you who are doubting that Prof and me were very close. Even after the event, Prof told people what he thought about being pressured to let me go.
On the 4th day of December 2017, you wrote and posted on the internet an article entitled Wayomi's Suspected Crimes and All the Missing Link. I hope you remember. It's a Martin Amidu. What is the missing link in what you call the Wayomi's crimes? And what do you intend doing about it when Parliament approves your nomination? Thank you very much.
My comrade, Kokubaku, we've been comrades since the revolutionary times. Even though he fell out with the revolution, I was still close to him. Kwesi Pratt and all those people. He raised the issue of the missing link, right? And then I wrote my article to support the missing link. Because as Attorney General, I had said that Wayome cannot be prosecuted alone, and that all his accomplices must be prosecuted. Indeed, when we met in my office on the 13th of January, the attorneys who are listening, unfortunately, Gertrude Akins, the DPP, is dead, but the other lawyers, and then Gezi and Co., who are listening, in the conference room, they all agreed that part of the fault is from this house. Right? So we said that.
And I remember this house, nominate this house as in Parliament or
No, the Attorney General's Department.
Very well.
So if we are going to prosecute, we should prosecute everybody involved and not Wayome alone. That was one of the reasons, why the Hundrums hounded me, so that they would not be prosecuted. So Wayome alone was prosecuted. And if you remember, in the judgment, the judge said that Wayome could not be prosecuted alone, and that those who acted with him were not brought. So Ajet Nassam, who was proved to be a corrupt judge later, acquitted Wayome. If I had prosecuted that case together with the accomplices, the result would be different. And my perception is that the prosecution was bungled to get that guy out. I mean, I was acting as Attorney General, and the facts are there, the files are there. I wasn't making it up myself. The lawyers are still in the Attorney General's department.
Yes,
So if I come into office and somebody comes to make a complaint, and can substantiate it, that there was a residual offense. It is not me who is going to investigate it. It's not me who is going to prosecute it. If there is a strong case, why not? There's no statute of limitation to crime.
Do you think that as a country we'll be able to fight or eradicate corruption completely or from the system?
No, Madam. Mr. Chairman, corruption, President Kufuor told all of us that it started from Adam. It's even in the US, in Britain, in all those advanced countries, there's petty corruption, but the level and magnitude is the biggest problem. You see, during the PNDC, all of us were afraid because if you were a PNDC secretary and you were caught, you were for the gallows. So it didn't happen. You remember the first parliament, we bought them second-hand cars, and they accepted it. But you see, the situation has to be dealt with. It has to be dealt with. And that is why I'm saying the president, realizing that if he doesn't deal with it now, we will have a bigger problem, decided that, well, Martin, come and help do it. And I'm saying I'll do it fairly and impartially.
Honorable nominee, my attention has been drawn to some unparliamentary language, hoodlums.
I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Barbara, you're done.
Last one.
Well, I usually allow follow-ups.
Follow-up.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Amidu, I know the president is very confident. His Excellency Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo is very confident that you'll be able to deliver. I want to know from you what legacy you'd want to leave and you would be remembered for. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me be very humble to tell you that I accepted the nomination to try. I didn't accept the nomination on the grounds that I will succeed. I accepted to try. And that's what I'm going to do. Because I'm just one person. My deputies' integrity and honesty will be important. The integrity and honesty of my staff will be important. They are going to be adults I didn't give birth to. They would have had several socializations I didn't take part to, as Honorable Minority Leader, as a sociologist knows. But I'm going to try to work with them, and because of my example leadership, hoping that they will all let us work as a team in the honest spirit of achieving something. I think that...
Chairman, I've heard the nominee acknowledge that he'll be working through a board. I've heard your deputy, your staff. What about your board?
The board that will be matters of policy, but they will not decide for us our investigations and prosecutions. That will be to interfere into my independence.
What about the Attorney General?
The Attorney General will be prosecuting under her authority. That doesn't mean that she would instruct us who to prosecute and who not to prosecute.
Chairman, I'm compelled, just, Barbara, before you are done, I'm compelled to go to Act 959. And for the nominees, if you follow through the law, functions of the board is not limited to policy. It's in addition, and I'm reading C, D, E, and F. Even though F supports your position, policy matter. Advise the special prosecutor on the recruitment and selection of the secretary and other staff. Develop and monitor implementation of a code of conduct for staff of the office. And facilitate cooperation between the office and relevant national investigative bodies, such as IOCO and SHRI. So beyond policy, what role will be your board? I note with satisfaction that you say you are just one strong individual, but you need the support of your board to succeed. And Chairman, once I have this floor, let me render...
No, it's not for you.
No. Just one issue. When I raise the issue of the Bulisa Way, a certain impression has been created publicly. I use it advisedly as a cultural joke, which is the case, to inspire humor into the debate, which I shared politely even with the chairman before I came on. Any person feeling offended, I regret it and I retract. I thank you. But it was used strictly in the cultural sense of a joke, of the joking relationship established within Northern Ghana and Northern culture. But to my question, your board.
Mr. Chairman, I will say that the relationship, the bull says, I will leave it, but I have a different view, as I've said already, you know. But my board, as I said, all those recruitment issues and all that, if you look at policy generally, it all comes under it. And definitely we'll interview staff and all that. But the law also says that in the day-to-day performance of the functions of the special prosecutor, he will not be under the direction or control of any person. But you also look at the way you form the board, and you will see that there is a little bit of a problem there. But I think that we can still work it out. When the whole board is composed, I think we'll be able to find a working way, because this law must work. Doesn't matter what the problems are. We are human beings. It's important to fight corruption. We will not be looking at what lapses in the law there are. I am prepared to work with the board to make sure that the institution is set up. But I'm not going to allow the board to usurp my investigatory and prosecutorial functions, which have been given to me. As the article I sent out shows, I sent out on the net shows, even in the United States, the Attorney General doesn't instruct the special prosecutor. Mueller is there. But you realize that when the Attorney General tries to interfere, the nation rises up. And I'm expecting Ghanaians who are supporting this appointment to behave like the Americans are behaving. So to be our backbone when politicians want to interfere with our independence. So that's the situation. So I don't see any conflict between the board and my office. You know, I think that it is doable, it is workable, and we will go on well.
Chairman, before the Honorable Okujeto, the nominee have just stated a very important historical fact of America and Mueller. Mueller is contemporary. That's 21st century, 2016 and 17. But if Ghana was to learn, I appreciate the point you are making, that we need to learn from best practice. If you go back to Watergate scandal in 1978, between President Richard Nixon, when Nixon appointed Cox, Nixon appointed Richardson Attorney General, then subsequently Cox as Special Prosecutor. You don't think that Ghana may have to go through some experience just like the Americans did in the 70s before the improved special counsel that they have today?
Mr. Chairman, I think that we learn as a nation, we learn from other nations' experiences. As you said, Richardson was Attorney General. He appointed Cox as Special Prosecutor. In his parliamentary approval like mine, he promised Parliament that he will not fire Cox. Then Nixon directs him to fire him, so he resigns. Nixon directs his deputy to fire him, so he resigns. It was only Brock who agreed to fire Cox. And when he did that, the whole Congress was up in arms. The whole nation was up in arms. That is what brought the Ethics in Governance Act 1974, and made it impossible for the special prosecutor to be dismissed. So that lesson is there for us to learn. And I'm hoping that with an eminent constitutional lawyer as president, I mean, I should think that he should know that already. And maybe that's why he decided that I should come and do it, so that I can maybe take the bullet and say it won't be done. I don't know.
Chairman, to the nominee, President, eminent constitutional lawyer, Special Prosecutor, eminent constitutional lawyer, what is wrong with the board, as you suggested? The board, you said in your reaction you gave us an indication. This Parliament, our committee makes recommendations. When you looked at the composition of the board, you went close to saying that, look at the board, we'll work with it. Is there something wrong that you want Parliament to take note of and to look at?
No. What I'm saying is that we will work with the board. I don't think it will be fair for me. When I meet the board the first time, I'll tell them what I think our problem is. And then we can collectively take it. I won't sit here and be talking about any lacuna in the law when they are absent. So if you bear with me, when I have met them and we have resolved the lacuna and we are moving, I will tell the public how we have managed it. But to do it here will be a little bit jumping the boat.